Well, welcome guys. It's been a hectic couple of weeks for me. If you're out of the loop, over on Final Fantasy side, the Endwalker expansion just came out. So I've been covering and doing loads of content, specifically trying to catch up to the launch of that X-Pack. There's so much story to play through there, I didn't even make it in the end. There's been a few Guild Wars streams as well. Of course, if you're only watching YouTube, and at that, you're not on my second channel, you would have been missing out big time. And I kind of look up and realize, my God, it's suddenly been a while and people haven't been kept in the loop. So I wanted to make a video here today to talk specifically about some amazing End of Dragon stuff that came out at the same time. I'll tell you what, it's very, very difficult covering two MMOs at once. On the Guild Wars side, there's actually been some really brilliant information that's invigorated me about End of Dragons. In a way, I can honestly say probably the past 4, 5, 6 months, nothing has. And it's to do with what's in the title. Yes, legendary weapons. So in today's video, I'm going to get the ball rolling, talking more regularly about End of Dragons again, now that Endwalker's out and I'm not kind of in the race for that. Yeah, let's get into it. Legendary weapons. Now, just a quick recap. If you remember the first Look live stream, they did talk about how End of Dragons was coming with Legendaries again. Yay, that's good news in and of itself. The bad news was, as it seemed, instead of every Legendary in the set being a unique appearance and a unique idea, as we have been accustomed to with the previous two generations, this new generation, they were all gonna look the same. And that really bugged a lot of people. You know, if your idea of what you loved about Legendaries was, if Legendary to you meant unique, which I have to be honest, for me, it never really did. But a lot of people got kind of ticked off this idea that, like, if they all looked the same, suddenly it wasn't Legendary anymore because it wasn't unique enough. And then there were other people in another camp, which is kind of the one I was in, where, you know, it's all well and good to do a whole set of Legendaries right at the start. That's something we've never experienced with a Guild Wars expansion, and I do value. Right, think about Heart of Thorns, they only did 3. If you weren't interested in those weapons, then you were shit out of luck. Path of Fire, they were just continuing along with dribbling them in through Living World. Doing a whole set and expansion's a good thing, but maybe you're like me, and you just didn't care about the aesthetic much, because they were confirmed to be Aurene legendary weapons. So there were rainbows and crystals and prisms and general, like, bright shininess, which, like, I get it, some people would really enjoy that. I always lean more on the fiery stuff. I always lean more on the edgy stuff. So I kind of felt like I'd missed out on a whole gen. And a lot of people were disappointed with the news. There was one thing. Now, you remember I was talking about this. There was one letter on one blog post that gave some of us hope. And it was the fact that they pluralized the word set. They said there were sets with End of Dragons. And the way it was phrased was like, if you really wanted to be a believer and you really wanted to hope, maybe that S meant there was more than meets the eye. And if you remember watching my coverage in late summer, you know, we showed this off, we talked about this. It was a great idea, and guess what? Well, everyone that believed in the sets concepts have been vindicated, because it's true. End of Dragons doesn't just have Aurene weapons. It looks like since that time, ArenaNet has been quietly working away, and now they have art to show us. They've revealed the full plan for this generation of Legendaries, and it's brilliant. So here's the idea. There's a full blog post. You guys can pause the video if you like it and read in the description, but I'll sum it up for you. The idea is that you're going to build the Aurene weapon and collect that. That's a baseline legendary for you, though. Unlike the previous generations, this new gen, you can take the legendary and continue upgrading it. So it goes precursor, legendary, and now there are more paths for it. You can continue to upgrade its appearance and toggle it into new and different modes. So let's take the Greatsword, for example. Now, that's what they've got art for, and I'll put the images from the blog post here in the background. There is an Aurene version, which, you know, the prismatic Elder Dragon, the Elder Dragon with all the energies and so on. Aurene is base, but you'll actually be able to turn it into Primordus mode. Look at this here in the background. This is Primordus mode. Or you'll be able to make it Zhaitan, or you'll be able to make it Morgemoth, and through all the Elder Dragons. So this is really badass, because, like, look at the Zhaitan one here. As I just said, I really like the idea of it being edgy. Well, boom, I actually have an edgy appearance. A particular favorite of mine is, I love the Zhaitan one with, like, the saw teeth kind of effect. I actually really like the Morgemoth one as well, with, like, the crossguard or whatever, however we describe that, with, like, the ferniness. The other ones I can kind of take or leave. General Fire or General Ice, you know, I think we've seen a lot of other places in the game. But this is really cool. So what this actually means, guys, is they're not just making a set of legendary weapons for the terrestrial weapons. What number is that? 15, 13, something like that? There's not just, let's lowball it, there's not just 13 legendary weapons coming at once, which is way better than Heart of Thorns is 3, and Path of Fire is none. There's like 96, I think is the total number, because it's every weapon 6 times. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, but WP, They're still just sets. How dramatic really are the differences going to be? Well, I think we can see from the art that the differences are rather dramatic immediately. It does still kind of have that feel of a Black Lion weapon set. I acknowledge that. And if you really care about the super uniqueness, perhaps you're still disappointed there's only 6 styles instead of the full 13 styles or whatever. But I think that this is now a lot closer. And the final extra thing as well is, unlike with the previous legendaries, these ones actually have an additional special effect on them too. They won't just have unsheaths, they won't just have arm effects, they won't just have footsteps, they won't just have projectiles, which is all par for the course for the stuff we currently have, and does genuinely, the full package, feel better than gem store stuff in my opinion. But actually they're doing a new effect here now, which you kind of have seen a little bit in some places in the game, but it's on kill effects. So when you kill an enemy with one of these legendaries, a special animation will play as like a death blow. Now, I don't have footage for you here, guys. On the official ArenaNet stream, I kind of rehosted and talked about it yesterday. They showed for a few seconds one of these kill effects, just for the baseline Arena stuff. So for the Arena stuff, it's like a giant big rainbowy explosion. And what's kind of cool is it's not just an animation, but there's actual models that appear. There's actual like physical crystals spawn into the world at the base of the enemy that you've killed as like this on-strike death thing, which I think is really interesting. Now that's also going to change based on each Elder Dragon. We haven't seen examples of what the other ones look like, but I imagine with, say, Zhaitan, it would be like all these bones appearing or things, you know, maybe clawing up out of the ground and dragging people in as a cage or something. It's pretty exciting. It's also exciting, I think, the idea that you land the killing blow against like a giant world boss, so the animation's really big and you know it was your legendary that did it or something. So yes, that's how End of Dragon legendaries work. There's a lot more variations than we expected. And there's even like that extra little bit of quality of life on top of there too. They actually appeal to a wide range of styles because they're all the different Elder Dragons. And I think this is brilliant. I spend a lot of time out of the game hanging out with people who don't really play much Guild Wars anymore. And they never really know what they want to do. When they heard this legendary news, they were all really, really excited. And I have to say, I feel the same. It's like there will be these cool goals to go for in the X-Pack. If you've actually been playing through the Season of the Dragon stuff at the moment, you're entitled to the precursor for one Arena weapon. But now you know that's not just skipping all the content of the game and the progression for cool items, because now you're going to get a choice. What other dragons you want to go for? How else do you want to style it? And I think ArenaNet have actually been genuinely quite smart here. Some other things, by the way, there isn't any art for the Deep Sea Dragon right now. The devs are being cagey about that. The devs are being incredibly cagey about the Deep Sea Dragon in general with all this news. If you've been watching me cover the expansions that come out, you'll know that. They keep hiding from spoilers and stuff on streams. Maybe it's because the Deep Sea Dragon is going to look a lot different than we expect or feel a lot different than we expect. If something about the Deep Sea Dragon feels Dragon JD, then perhaps that's how you can expect the weapons to look. But they didn't show that, and they've been kind of sneaky. So there is possibly actually not just 6 sets, but 7 sets, if you assume there'll be a Bubbles set too, because there's Arena plus 6. And I even like the idea of them talking about other sets even after that. You know, the idea of this golden Elder Dragon that might have died in ore at the Pyrite Peninsula. What if eventually one day we get a set based on that or something? And I just really like the format here. The main thing I want to compliment is like the system idea, that players will get into End of Dragons. They'll have this idea to go for this Arena Legendary, especially if they've done Season of the Dragon and they're most of the way there anyway. And now, it's like they've got these quests. It's almost like side quests, right? That you'll actually be going on, because the devs have confirmed it is proper legendary acquisition after you've got the Arena base. You do go and participate in content to get these new versions. It's not just, I'll craft it with a little something. It's like what we currently know from Gen 2 collecting of legendary weapons. So, they have been cagey. Now, here's one big other thing that they've announced about legendaries. Kind of a bit of a side topic, but we definitely should talk about. They did sneak in a revelation here. It seems like a step backwards, but bear with them, I think. They've confirmed that the Arena weapons are trading postable, like Gen 1. So what's the story here? Generation 1 legendaries were all on the trading post. People complained about that and said, well, look, there's no prestige if you can just bust out your credit card and buy it. And so when Heart of Thorns came out and they did the 2nd gen and all the legendaries that have come since, none of it's on the trading post. You actually do have to go through collections and adventures and stuff to get your stuff done. So you might say, well, why are they going back? Well, the first thing I'd point out is, my guess is probably the reason they want it on the trading post is it gives people who craft those legendaries a bit more freedom, I suppose. You can craft legendaries to sell them. Maybe the devs are excited about that old vanilla feel where people would gift each other legendaries, and you haven't really been able to do that since Heart of Thorns. But my main guess as to why they're doing it is because when it's on the trading post and it can just boil down to pure gold, people on the impulse might use their credit cards to buy it, and that helps the game's revenue in some way. I doubt ArenaNet would ever admit that, but that might be a thing they're thinking about. And, you know, you can say that that's kind of scummy or whatever if you like, but if it helps the game to continue to be supported and confirms that we'll actually get future expansions, I'm sort of okay with it. But now here's the real reason why I'm okay with it. Because I think what ArenaNet are actually doing is they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, and they might have been just savvy enough to pull this off. Why? Because the baseline Aurene weapon is on the trading post, but the other variations aren't. So the way you've got to think about this is you've kind of got the Gen 1 feel to get to the baseline, but if you want the badass Zhaitan greatsword or the Zhaitan shield, whatever that might look like and so on, like I'm thinking about, you're still going to have Heart of Thorns, actual gameplay, actual time spent, actual adventures and side quests or whatever to go for to actually acquire. So you get both. The prestige and the idea that you actually had to participate in something is still there, it's just on the variations. And I think that the thing that's especially savvy about this is if someone's just spent 3,000 gold or 2,000 gold, whatever the Aurene weapon's going to cost, if you just spent that to get the baseline legendary, then you're definitely going to want to round it out right. You're definitely going to want to continue on your adventure because it's going to be like you want to get value out of that 3,000 gold, so you want to do the other stuff. So again, it's like they get their cake and eat it too. So it might be just be ArenaNet being very savvy. Maybe you guys hate the idea of the baseline being tradable anyway. But the final thing I would note is that even when you look at the Heart of Thorns standard, a lot of legendary crafting through the mastery system and as we've known it these more recent years, it is still just a matter of trading posts, right? It's just buying tons and tons of wood, or tons and tons and tons of orichalcum. A huge part of it has still been just getting out the credit card. So it's like, I don't even know whether they really even solved the problem before. Likewise, when I look at legendary collections, I think a lot of you guys might be groaning and rolling your eyes and thinking, oh, collections suck, that collections aren't real quests and so on. But I think that's kind of a blanket way of looking at the game. In truth, some of the legendary collections are really fun and really interesting and actually have you doing cool stuff, like throwing pies at enemies or finding all the ravens during Nevermore, or actually questing with the tigers for Chukran Champawat, which is probably like the gold standard. Some of them are really good, and then some of them are really lame and boring because ArenaNet did so many so quick, like with all the precursor stuff that came in right before Heart of Thorns. So the question just is, how does the crafting process and the questing process actually work? You know, some collections are great, some collections are bad. I'm not going to sit here and be a doomer and suggest that all the End of Dragons legendary collection stuff is automatically terrible just because I'm cherry picking some of the lesser experiences that already exist. I honestly do think some collections in Guild Wars do act as very well functioning quests. ArenaNet just needs to implement them right and figure out what's working. And I think that the whole game kind of gets tarred with an unfair brush at the moment with that. So I'm very optimistic about this. I really like the idea of pretty much everything here. And the revelation that these sets is actually anywhere 6, maybe even 7 sets of things to do is brilliant to me. Now, the final detail is that the actual alternate versions sound like they're going to be post-expansion content. So maybe they come in with living world patches, whatever those look like. This is only the second thing that ArenaNet's ever confirmed is coming after End of Dragons. The other thing being strike missions. So I wonder if they're tied in some way. And you know what that immediately makes me think of? Well, if you saw my strike mission video from a couple of months ago when they confirmed strikes were coming after the expansion's launch, I proposed they should do strikes like 10-man Glory of Tyria fight against Zhaitan. I suggested strikes around Dragonstorm and stuff. What are those? Elder Dragon battles. Wouldn't it be cool to be on the Glory of Tyria, a revamped, reworked Zhaitan fight, and doing it is actually earning you Zhaitan legendary weapons, and vice versa for the other Elder Dragons we've gone through? I mean, how fantastic would that be? Especially if, like, the last boss fight of End of Dragons itself is the Deep Sea Dragon, and the Deep Sea Dragon variation is in there immediately with, like, a cool strike and stuff. I would love that. Be very, very interesting to see what ArenaNet go with there, but big news in my opinion. So, also to note, just to round out this video, I don't want to go too long on this, and honestly, I don't really have too many great anecdotes about it. I did speak for about 9 hours on stream about it yesterday, but they they had some other revelations on stream. First of all, they did a character preview lore snippet section, which was obviously very interesting to me. Basically, they picked some characters from End of Dragons that we haven't met yet, we don't know anything about, and they said, okay, here's what these characters do. So we didn't hear anything about Goric or Casimir or Marjorie and so on, which we know are in the expansion. It was kind of these new characters. So they talked about June, and they talked about the Empress. Of particular note was a lot more information about Mytrin's first mate. So you know the opening trailer for End of Dragons? It shows Mytrin on the airship, and there's this mysterious Asura standing next to them, and I always thought that they looked really cool. They kind of had that slip of a tongue. This Asura's called Anchor. Well, we get information about Anchor. Turns out Anchor has like a lot of history with Goric and was tied to the Thormanova reactor disaster, which is a really cool set piece in the world building. You guys have heard me talk about lots of times over the years, but to be honest, I kind of feel like got ruined a bit, or they stopped talking about after Scarlet's revelation was declared with it way back during Season 1. We know that Season 1 is of interest again just because Mytrin's in the expansion. Well, now we hear a little bit about this new first mate as well, Anchor, who's going to be replacing Horik. They have like 2 weirdly coloured eyes. I was honestly really fascinated there. We also hear about some other Aetherblades. There's a really interesting chart-looking Aetherblade, and best of all, a Dredge Aetherblade. One of the main characters of End of Dragons is a Dredge. They're like a navigator, as a sky pirate navigator, and they're a Dredge. Dredge are blind. Like, this character's like wearing goggles, and we know they can't see. So I'm really interested to see what ArenaNet do with that. Perhaps they'll reveal that they've managed to augment his sight in some way with some of the technology they're using. It was just really, really interesting. Another amazing character they showed off, which is kind of weird for the lore, is a Warden. We actually see a Warden with like this crazy weird headpiece. But they kind of talk about the lore as though it's similar to the Juggernaut lore. So maybe they're combining the 2 areas, and therefore that will actually kill the idea of the Sylvari theory. So there's some weird stuff going on there too, which I'm kind of curious about right now. But just the character design of the Warden was very fascinating. They talked a bit about a Tengu too, which, you know, Tengu are fun, but the characters themselves actually seemed a little bit uninteresting to me. The other final thing they showed off at the end of the week was Arborstone. Which is one of the mastery lines, sort of the last mystery mastery line we were all wondering what was going to be. Now, you guys know me, I don't really have high opinions of the mastery system. I think it needs to be an actual tree where you're making decisions what you spec into, or if it's not a tree, then each line needs to be interesting and you're making those decisions, which line do you go for first. This sounds pretty lame, to be honest. It's essentially a mastery line that's just unlocking different vendors and stuff. At this place, Arborstone, so it's the cathedral within the Echo Forest, but there are some smart things ArenaNet are doing here. Essentially, this is a location in End of Dragons that will act as a hub, like the Sun's Refuge in Season 4, and like the Eye of the North in the Icebreed Saga. Now, let's just remember, when the Sun's Refuge came out, how much we all loved that in Season 4. We all immediately said, this should go through the whole season, this should tie all the patches together. ArenaNet listened, and in the Icebreed Saga, they did Eye of the North as a similar location. The thing about the Eye of the North, though, is it wasn't introduced until a fair clip into the Icebreed Saga, and then pretty much right after it was introduced, they decided to cut the Icebreed Saga in favour of End of Dragons instead. So the point I'm trying to make here is, we all love the idea of a hub, and we all see the power of a hub, and especially if you remember how everyone took the Sun's Refuge, which was so good. We were all excited about it, but ever since then, we haven't really seen one shine. We certainly have never seen a hub in an expansion. Heart of Thorns never had a proper hub style place like that. POF itself didn't. It just had one living world patch. So I'm really excited about the prospect of End of Dragons coming out with a hub at the start that provides value, not just for End of Dragons itself as a central location, but all the living world season after it, whatever that looks like and whatever ArenaNet are doing. I think this is actually something really powerful, and we get to see what the Eye of the North was going to be before the Icebreed Saga kind of got cut and changed. So I am kind of excited just about the principle of it. On the stream, they showed like having tier 0 with the mastery, and it's kind of very empty and cold and derelict. And as you build the mastery up, lots of new characters come in, and it changes the environment a lot. It gets a lot warmer, the lighting changes. It does look like they put a lot of work in there. You guys might be cynical about the idea of having a big hub. It's essentially like an open world Sun's Refuge, right? It's just like the Eye of the North. But you might be thinking, well, I have Lion's Arch, I have Divinity's Reach, I have the Black Citadel, I already have these other places. I have the Fractal Lobby. Well, they've got a new mechanic in there you'll be familiar with from other MMOs. They have like rest XP now. So if you log out, if you spend time at Arborstone, it will give you boosts for the gameplay later. So it will encourage the community to be there, and it will be like a big kind of city type area, which again is something that the other expansions missed out on. We didn't really have an equivalent for that on Heart of Thorns. What have people been asking for in these expansions? Like a city area, right? Heart of Thorns never provided that. POF had Amnoon, but functionally it didn't really work that way either. This place has an Asura Gate, it has the lot. So that's a powerful thing too. I think many of us thought that Kaineng was going to host it, but it's going to be Arborstone. And when I think of it in those terms, I think this could be good. I do wonder whether rest XP is the best thing. I would have rathered it be gold find or magic find. XP is kind of lame, you know, and the mastery system itself is kind of lame. But I don't think that's necessarily Arborstone's fault. And the stream was a little bit dry and a little bit boring. They were just kind of running around showing off the environment. But it's a good initiative, and I'm happy to have had a bit of information about it. So that's it really, guys. The last thing is the siege turtle. Now that's the footage that I've got in the background. This is left from the big stream I did on that too, which you may have missed also. Now the thing with the siege turtle, I was going to do like a whole YouTube video specifically on my impressions about it, but I realized something during the stream and during the beta, and that's that we didn't experience the siege turtles with its masteries unlocked. Now 99% of our gameplay in Guild Wars 2 is going to be with those masteries unlocked, right? It kind of doesn't, like, what use is a review of the Raptor before it has the full leap, or the Springer before it has the full leap, or hell, like the Griffin and the Skyscale. So it's kind of weird to talk about. What I would say right now is it was not as fun for general movement. It was not a great generalist. It was very slidey, it was very slow, it didn't jump as high as I thought it was going to. It was very clunky and very big. Now that's not necessarily bad, in my opinion. I think I still want to be using Raptors, and I still want to be using Springers. I want a diversity. So really, I'm leaning on this mount, without the masteries that is. Maybe it changes once it gets them. I'm leaning on it more as a combat thing, and it is really interesting as a combat device. I love the idea of a ton of people on turtles, driving in massive circles, fighting world bosses and stuff, but we kind of don't get too much of that experience yet. I am scared that because you can only really do a lot of combat with it in a co-op environment, people won't use it much. But it kind of rides or die, I think, is my main thought with it, on how much specific content ArenaNet make for it. Like, if there's a lot of reason to use its ability to walk around underwater, then you'll use the turtle, you know? But that requires ArenaNet to create that reason within the expansion. If there's a lot of, like, siege objectives in the open world and in the metas that require a turtle, then obviously people will use it a lot. This thing is either going to feel like a bit of a fringe gimmick, if it doesn't have much content to interact with, or it's going to feel brilliant because there is a lot of content for it to interact with, and that's really what it relies on. And well, the beta was just in Corteria, and the beta was without the masteries, so it's kind of hard to say what I really think about it right now. I mean, the art was lovely, and I quite liked the you know, the actual feel of it. It was just in line in terms of like pure quality with all the other mounts. Just how it fits in and how much I'm really going to use it, I think time will tell. The other thing I think is maybe when you're in the gunner seat, it probably needs slightly more interesting interactions than just spamming skill 1. Maybe some skill that applies vulnerability, and then the other skill does more damage, like a setup payoff type thing. So we're just alternating our buttons at least a bit would be nice. But until we have more of those masteries and you feel it with more ammo coming in and stuff, it's kind of hard to even judge that as well. So there you have it, guys. That's a little catch up on the past couple of weeks. I'll be back tomorrow. I've had a tier list I've been sitting on that I want to really do for a while now. And as we roll into these final few months before End of Dragons properly releases, I'm thinking about build videos again. I kind of want to give you guys builds for each of the classes that I will be playing, my favorite ways to play PvE when I actually get into the expansion before we collect those new elite specs. So that should be fun as well, and that's kind of the thing I'm thinking about. I'm not sure when the first video of that will come out, but that's kind of what's on my plans right now. If you're desperate for more content, I have loads more. Just make sure you click the link down in Twitch. I'll probably be streaming a bunch more Guild Wars 2 today. We had a lot of Q&A and a lot of fun back and forth. I made a new Necro using the new character creation faces. You can create like these new Asura with only one eye now. Really interesting. If you guys want to see some of that, feel free to check down there. I really hope you feel like you're not missing out. Just before I shot this video, I was playing in Ore and someone whispered me, WP, make a video, I'm having withdrawals. And I'm sort of sitting there thinking to myself, Christ, you know, I've produced 30, 40, 50 hours of content the past couple of weeks. It is there if you want to look for it. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Give me your thoughts on the Legendary stuff. I do think there's a bit of a debate about especially then coming to the TP down below. And I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys.